What's going on, everybody? Brett here, back with my YouTube channel, Good Talk Gaming. Today we've got a special event for you, subscriber battle between Triari and Snowlinks on the very open field map of Oakenhammer. This is, of course, Total War Warhammer 2, and I'm excited. It's going to be Bretonia versus Triari's favorite faction, the High Elves. And, okay, the battle is underway. We're going to go ahead and slow-mo it because there's a lot of interesting picks on both sides of the battlefield. So, Triari's decided to go with a strategy that I see he likes quite a bit, and it involves him dominating the air through the use of the Frostheart Phoenix. Let's go ahead and open up the unit cards as well. The Star Dragon, the most powerful flying unit in the game. The Frostheart Phoenix also brings, and we should go over this because it's pretty dang important. If we can get him, come on, can we get you? Oh no, he has auras. There we go, the Blizzard Aura. So it affects enemies around them, lowers their armor-piercing damage and their melee attack, as well as attuned to magic. So as long as you have more than 50% of your mana, he gets 12% magic resistance. And he causes fear, and he has a decent ward save as well of 12%. So these three units together, Alariel with her healing up on her Eagle Mount, pretty much should help them, rule the skies. And Triari's back line is almost irrelevant at this point. He's going to use the speed and mobility of that group to forge out ahead and try and get picks. Meanwhile, his spearmen sit at home in the backfield, protecting these Sword Masters of Hoeth with their huge armor piercing. Let's zoom in so you can check out these bad boys as they wait in the wings. Let the spearmen take the damage, let the Sword Masters do the damage, and at the end of the day, he has three groups of Lothern Sea Guard. The unshielded variant, they're essentially spearmen with the ability to shoot, and they're a powerful, very versatile unit. And no cav for Triari, which is pretty unusual for him. I know he likes his cav. But he's going to be relying super heavily on these units here. And if he can't make a play with them, I fear that all may be lost. So the Bretonian player had a strategy here with his Blessed Field Trebuchet. The thing about the Blessed Field Trebuchet as opposed to the standard one is that its ammunition is magical. So it bypasses physical resistance, kind of the only thing there to benefit. But the armor-piercing missiles are quite strong. If he was able to target the Sword Masters of Hoeth, it would be pretty devastating. But it's only being protected by some men-at-arms with shields, some peasant mobs. So this goon squad here is going to be more than capable of destroying it. And wise play here from Snowlinks. He's going to be repositioning his trebuchet. As he moves this to the left, he also moves in to engage with his Royal Hippogriff Knights, who are armor-piercing. I don't know how much of their attack is anti-large, none at all. I thought for sure they had a little bit of an anti-large bonus, but they don't. The Royal Pegasus Knights, however, do. Bonus versus large of 12, and they also have great armor piercing. They're Living Saints. They have that physical resistance. They're basically Grail Knights on Pegasus, is how you have to think of them. And I don't know why the Royal Hippogriff Knights don't have that as well. But they do have a lot of physical resistance. Magical damage will work through that, which the Frostheart Phoenix has, and perhaps a good breath attack into the Royal Pegasus Knights, if that's able to land, could kill a few models. But the Bretonian player decided to go extremely wide. Lots of men-at-arms with shields, going to overwhelm the front line here, and then attempt to get in the back lines with triple Knight Errants, and I like that a lot. They're already in Lance formation for that bonus to their acceleration charge speed. So here we go. Let's go ahead and fast full speed at this point. And Tempest going down. Is that the Tempest of... There's a Grail Relique. That's the Fey Enchantress using Arcane Conduit, but a bit of a whiff there. And now, the Mounted Yeoman Archers are going to be using their ranged firepower to try and focus down the Frostheart Phoenix in the midst of all of this. But the Royal Pegasus Knights, with a little bit of healing support, and they're getting an Earthblood now from the Fey Enchantress, they're going to be able to stand and fight. Regrowth would probably be better, but the Royal Hippogriff Knights have such huge HP models. They're getting an Arcane Unforging to deal damage to them, and it's not ideal. You really want to use that on someone like the Fey Enchantress to prevent her from casting her spells. It resets basically the cooldown timers on spells, so it's very effective there. But they were able to goon out the Royal Pegasus Knights, but with the healing, with their naturally high leadership, unless they're chased off, they will be back. And the Royal Hippogriff Knights are going to be jumping into the fray. Triari's trying to heal up his Frostheart Phoenix, who's kind of tanking all of his archer fire with the Star of Avalon. But I mean, the Royal Hippogriff Knights are a pretty tough opponent. And Tempest is going off, lowering their speed. Good use. It's going to do some damage as well, but most of the models are almost outside of its area of effect. But yeah, they're still intact. They have all of their models still. They do. The Royal Hippogriff Knights have been really upgraded in recent times. They used to die so easily, but a nice Earthblood here would top them off. Probably put them up to about 75%. Breath attack, able to kill one model, probably worth it. And at this point, it's just a straight aerial battle. But now, finally, the Field Trebuchet is going off onto the Swordmasters of Hoeth, the perfect target. Very expensive. And yeah, the Bretonnian player is really relying on their mobile archery units to try and take this aerial fight. The Star Dragon's getting super low. And I think he's going to go down. That's just too much anti-large. His HP is being chipped. He's got the magical damage now, and he is bypassing that physical resistance. So whenever he hits with 580 weapon strength, he's going to kill stuff. But if he goes down, that's going to be a pretty big shift to the balance of power. The Bretonnians are using all of their meat shield men-at-arms units. He's pushing them forward, probably trying to keep the fight away from his artillery. And now you see the Knight Errants are in motion. Going to be looking to get up and around in the backfield, no doubt. Potentially shut down the Lothern Sea Guard when they're not looking. They do count basically as spearmen, so you have to be careful about engaging them with cavalry, that's for sure. So, Earthblood going off on the Swordmasters of Hoeth. I'm guessing Regrowth has probably not been taken. No, it certainly hasn't been. But good move here, using Alario, chase down the Royal Hippogriff Knights. -8 leadership, it would be great if they would shatter. But the Frostheart Phoenix is still in excellent shape. Could see him going after the artillery here, and he does. Unfortunately, a single model or a single entity unit like the Frostheart Phoenix is not ideal for shutting down multi-pieced artilleries. They'll continue to fire while it attacks, and unless they're terrified off, they're just going to keep on shooting. So the Mounted Yeoman Archers really need to take up a good position here. Without the shields, the Lothern Sea Guard is just as vulnerable as any other archer unit to this Mounted Yeoman fire. And as long as they have their backs to these Knight Errants, they're going to be in for some pretty devastating charges. Mounted Yeomen are relatively cheap, and it's honestly not bad to sacrifice, 30% of their health, if in the end it means that these Knight Errants can come in and crush the only ranged units that Triari seems to have left. So Alario chased the Royal Hippogriffs off the battlefield, is now coming back, using that greater Arcane Conduit, without a doubt, to regenerate some of her Winds of Magic. The Fey Enchantress also using Arcane Conduit to get more magic, and shooting the Field Trebuchet into the backs of your own units, not a bad idea, as long as it's also killing the Swordmasters of Hoeth. And honestly, these are such expensive units that if they're wasting their time fighting those, really cheap men-at-arms, then they're doing just fine. And the Grail Relic was used as a bit of not a distraction necessarily, but once the Swordmasters wrapped up the Grail Relic, which is a tough unit to kill, it's kind of a squirrely unit to hit. The Chalice of Potions, I think is what it's called. It basically drops Chalice of Potions. It drops a Comet of Cassadora, and trying to get that good value on the Swordmasters of Hoeth. It's huge damage to clumped up infantry. The Knights Errant took a bit too circuitous of a route, let's say, to get into these Lothern Sea Guard. They should have been wrapping them up for quite some time. A good Earthblood, that's a lot of value, getting 3 units in one. Unfortunately, that Star of Avalorn over here kind of whiffed. He was trying to catch his Swordmasters of Hoeth, but it probably would have been better suited to this type of fight here, or even here. It has really good healing, but you don't want to move. You want to use it on targets that are not moving. And in this type of a spread out battle, it can get pretty hectic, and a lot of times you can end up missing. Rough that the Frostheart Phoenix has terrified these Mounted Yeoman Archers. They still have a decent amount of ammunition, and if it was me, I would probably try and keep them away from any terror-causing units, and bring them to a part of the battlefield where they can basically just act as archers into the late game. And good job trying to cycle charge with these Knight Errants. You don't want to really leave them in sustained combat versus spears. If they could get maybe one charge into the rear of these Lothern Sea Guard, one charge here, and then maybe another charge here, you can really tie down a lot of the units that Triari has left available to him. And no surprise here to see peasant mobs and men-at-arms routing. It's almost their job to do. Trebuchet has been offline. I guess Yeah, there's nothing left of them. I don't see the crew anywhere. And everything appears to be routing, but Snowlink's still making good use of his cavalry. Fey Enchantress still in great shape. Not sure what else she can do though. Most of her magic is healing in nature, and the Chalice of Potions is really the only offensive magic that she has. I personally like to use her in melee combat. I don't know if he took the draining effect. Yes, he has the Miss of the Lady, but he's not using her in a melee combat scenario. I mean, at the very least, you could pull her into this fight here, just backed up by the men-at-arms, and you'd be doing, you know, a minor draining effect to these spearmen. And she also causes fear whenever she's on the back of Silveron, her unicorn mount. So here we go. She's going to be charging into the back. Could potentially break these spearmen. You see the draining effect going off. And Triari has managed to keep Ilario and the Frostheart Phoenix quite healthy. We see a healthy unit of Swordmasters, and, you know, this unit's not so healthy, but it still has 60 models. With a little bit of healing, they could really be topped off. And I don't know that I would use this very healthy unit of Spearmen to chase down these peasant mobs. I think the best thing to do at this point is to consolidate. And luckily for him, most of his units are on this side of the battlefield. So he needs to make kind of like a death box. Put your spearmen along the outside so that you're pretty impervious to this cavalry charge. Use those shields to take what's left of the mounted yeoman fire. The artillery is no longer an issue. And then protect your swordmasters as well as you can. And use Ilario's superior healing to keep them alive. And there's not a single thing on this side of the battlefield currently that can go toe-to-toe with this nearly completely intact group of Swordmasters of Hoeth. They could probably kill any 3-4 of these units. They just would need a little bit of protection. And if you consider the negative debuffs that are applied by the Frostheart Phoenix whenever it's engaged in melee, I mean, that minus, you know, melee attack of 9, that's huge. And also the armor piercing value is getting lowered. It makes it so that the armor of something like the Swordmasters, who's sitting at 90, it goes a long way in protecting them in these types of pit fights versus chaff units. So we just need a bit of a consolidation, but you also are going to have to be careful because I'm pretty sure there's one more Chalice of Potions. I think that has 2 counters on it. And he's going to attempt to goon out the Fey Enchantress. Let's see if that works. She's a pretty vulnerable target, but not as vulnerable as she looks. Lots of self-healing, lots of physical resistance, and that's usually enough to protect her. More arcane conduits. And we can fast forward here. Triari's just trying to chase what he can off the battlefield, and if he reforms ranks on this side, you know, make them come to you, fight near the edge of the battlefield where your superior leadership can cause enemy units to rout, and meanwhile you'll be standing doing just fine. So Arcane and Forging going off, trying to do some damage to these Knights Errant. And it's going to kill a few models, and it's going to do some decent damage, but it's no Fate of Buna. It doesn't have that kind of killing power. You'll see here it says it's strong versus single combatant. It's tough because the Fey Enchantress, you would basically almost be using it just for its ability cooldown reduction, because the Fey Enchantress on the back of Silverall has 60% magic resistance, which is just an absurd amount. So she's a very difficult target to Spirit Leech, to Arcane and Forging, to Effigia to get. You know, she's not a good target for magic. And if they huddle around this Grail Relic, they're going to have a good chance of staying in the fight. It has that encouragement aura, but it also has a special aura that only can be conferred by a dead Grail Knight sitting on the backs of a bunch of peasants. But if we look here, it has the Icon of Devotion, plus 12 leadership and immune to psychology, which is going to be invaluable versus something like that Frostheart Phoenix. So a lot of posturing going to be going on here. Trying to pick off these Knights Errant where he can. Don't blame him. They're a pretty vulnerable target. Snowlinks honestly should just move as one unit, put all of his guys in one tightly packed formation, hot group it, you know, make it a single group, lock it in, and then just move forward. And then once you engage the front lines, detach your Knights Errant and try to, you know, flank in that way, because now he's in a huge blob. And I don't think Triari has a single way to punish this. No banishment, no dwellers below. That would be devastating. Either one of those would be devastating. And the mounted yeomen are just being used to charge into the Swordmasters, I guess as a delay tactic, while he tries to surround this Frostheart Phoenix and take it out. And he can certainly do that. The Fey Enchantress has 290 weapon strength. If she lands a couple hits, the Frostheart Phoenix will feel it. And since he still has cavalry left, using these as a means of rear charging and perhaps breaking off units is not as viable, because at the end of the day he still has the Knight Errants to accomplish that task. I don't know that I ever like throwing away a unit like this, but the delay might be worth it if he's able to get the Frostheart Phoenix. It's shaken. He doesn't have any spears, however, which is what he needs to fight these large targets. Cool little swooping maneuver there from Alarielle. And anyone who engages around the Fey Enchantress is going to suffer the draining of her aura, the Mists of the Lady. Nice Earthblood, going to be going off on pretty much every infantry unit left on the battlefield. There's some returning peasants, but they're not going to be enough to save them. What will help, though, are these rear charges into unbraced spearmen. The Knight Errant's just tearing through. And I think they were able to brace there for that one. Right here needs to get into the battle. The Swordmasters are being drained. And there's just so much chaff left for the Bretonnian player. Frostheart Phoenix rallies, is coming back. Spearmen really need to get in here. As long as Alarielle doesn't break, I think the High Elves may have this. But there's just so much cavalry left on the battlefield as well. Once these spearmen get tied up with this peasant mob, we'll be seeing a lot of rear charging and a lot of cycle charging. Getting that charge bonus, the Knights Errant, 73 charge bonus. Very strong. It's going to be solid versus the Swordmasters. I mean, the spearmen, not so much, but they're facing the wrong way, so they were charged in the back. And good play from the Bretonnian player, pulling them out. You want to leave them for a couple seconds, let them do that big damage with the charge bonus, and then pull them out so they don't take a ton versus the spearmen. I mean, things are looking pretty good for Triarii. However, the Fey Enchantress up to 52, 53, 54. The kills just keep climbing. And that draining aura, all of these units have such low health individually on their models that drain is starting to actually kill them. She's up to 69, 70 kills since we last checked, 15 kills in just a second, and she is just murdering them. Peasant mobs just holding up these spearmen. And it sounds like we hear the retreat charge. The Frostheart Phoenix doesn't have the HP to continue sustaining. And even though Alarielle has gotten a lot of kills herself, sitting at 58, she just has no support. Everything is running. Great use of the Knights Errant, in my opinion. One of the best units on the Bretonnian roster. They're cost efficient. They deal with infantry very well. They're kind of like somewhere in between using just war dogs and hounds, like you might for, let's say, Chaos or Norska, and using really solid cavalry, like Reichsguard or something. They're kind of in that middle ground where they're nice and cheap, and if you lose them, you probably won't lose the game, but if you use them effectively, you can get a ton of value. You can get Knights Errant, with 100 kills easily. And this battle is still going on. The Frostheart Phoenix needs to break, and it looks like it just may be breaking now. It's broken, and the only thing left is Alarielle. I know Triarii is going to fight to the last to try and get this win. Using the Spearman as kind of a last bastion to support himself. Knights Errant routing, Peasants routing. The Frostheart Phoenix comes back in with 500 HP. And we can just fast forward here. Yeah, without ground units, Alarielle can't just sit up in the air anymore. All of the Spearmen, all of the Swordmasters of Hoeth have abandoned him. And that's going to be it. So a pretty wild battle there with a lot of positioning use. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, bringing a single artillery piece is something that I like because it can force your enemy to come to you. Triarii, however, had almost like a counter to that. He had the Airforce, and he ended up doing quite well. I mean, these Royal Pegasus Knights, while doing a ton of damage to the Star Dragon, ultimately died. I mean, the Royal Hippogriff Knights, I think, are 2,100 gold, and these are, I think, 1,600. So that was a huge investment. Ended up paying off, I feel, because they were able to rout off the Star Dragon, do some damage to the Frostheart Phoenix. But, man, they needed to be supported a bit better. I think if you're going to take these two very expensive units, you have to have regrowth. Earthblood is just not a good enough healing spell for these very expensive units with very high HP models. And I think just one or two regrowths in the beginning would have completely turned this air fight And I think at that point, the battle would not have even been close. The Royal Hippogriff Knights were sitting at like 40% HP without having lost a model. A single regrowth there would have topped them off quite nicely. The peasant mobs and the men-at-arms did their job. The Knight Errants are probably the real MVPs here. Being able to be kept alive until the late game, until cycle charging becomes an absolute must. You'll see here 179 kills on these high elf units is no joke. And then the Fey Enchantress, staying healthy, staying in the pocket, using that draining effect to great effect, and managing to kill the much more elite Swordmasters of Hoeth, who of course, racked up huge kills against these chaff units, but they just couldn't find a home at the end there. They were just fighting peasant mobs. Meanwhile, they're all being drained by the Fey Enchantress, and that's a rough way to go. But good play from Snowlinks, great play from Triari. Thanks for sending me in these replays. Guys, if you're watching at home and you have some replays in Total Warhammer 2 that you'd like me to cast, whatever it is, if it's a good game, I want to cast it, just hit me up on Steam, and I'll send you an email, and you can go ahead and send me your replays there. But that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Take care, y'all.